currently have nearly 2,200 stolen vehicles through June 1st. 2,200 through June 1st. 2,200 separate victims. I want to point out the difficult work that our deputies and police officers are doing every day. Every day they're out there addressing the issue of crime, addressing these stolen vehicles. So we just want to say thank you for the work that you continue to do in these tough times. Between January 1st and April 26th of this year, there were 112 separate juveniles arrested for stolen vehicle cases. Of those, 30 were repeat offenders. So 30 of those kids were in a stolen vehicle and got arrested again for being in another stolen vehicle. Just think about that. Just last night, we had multiple stolen vehicles, and one of our deputies was injured as a result. Of the 2 teens we arrested, one was issued an appearance ticket 10 days ago. 10 days ago, they were in a stolen car. Last night, they're in another stolen car. They crashed it. They caused injury to a deputy. It's unacceptable. It has to be unacceptable to us as a community. How do we say that's okay? We've had multiple incidents of stolen vehicles wreaking havoc on our community. Here are just a few videos, both media clips and body-worn camera footage, that reiterate what we're talking about. As we watch these clips, I just want to highlight a couple of others. May 20th, 2023 at 4 a.m., MCSO located a stolen vehicle in the town of Penfield. A short pursuit ensued. Deputies stopped the vehicle safely and detained 7 juveniles who had damaged several other vehicles throughout the night. In another case in May of 2023, a coordinated multi-jurisdictional effort to arrest 2 17-year-olds and 2 15-year-olds in a stolen car in Perrington. In June of this year, 3 juveniles in a stolen vehicle struck a patrol car in Henrietta, enabling 2 of the stolen vehicles to flee. When they pursued the striking vehicle and took that person into custody, they were 13 years old. Think about that, a 13-year-old driving around a stolen vehicle, causing a crash. What we need. I know the county announced a couple of weeks ago the need for expedited appearance tickets, more intervention services. In addition to that, we need a place where we can bring these juveniles when this happens in the middle of the night. When we arrest 7 juveniles in a stolen vehicle out committing crimes in the middle of the evening, we need a 24-hour facility where we can bring them, where they will get intervention services, where we mandate that their family comes in and gets intervention services. We need to hold parents accountable. We need parents to be accountable for their kids and where they are. But what we also need is for the parents that are desperately trying to control their kids and are not having any luck, we need to support them. We need to provide services for them and give them all the assistance they need so that we're not arresting 30 juveniles on multiple occasions. We need that place. It needs to be mandated that when you're caught, you're immediately brought to this facility and you cannot be released until your parents have come in and we have a plan in place for you so that you're not going to go out and just recommit. You know, we changed the laws in the state and we didn't do anything to take this into account. We need to fix that. We need to fix the laws that were changed. If we just look back this week on Laser Street, we had an 18-year-old that was murdered in a stolen car. Just last night, as I mentioned, we had multiple cars that were crashed that were stolen and people getting injured. How long until more innocent people are killed, or even those that are stealing the cars are killed? As we saw in the video, they are not driving carefully. It's only a matter of time before we have multiple fatalities in these accidents. We need to do something. We've been asking for a long time for tweaks for some of these laws. The community, I was just at a community event this week on Monday, and they said the community wants to know, what are you going to do different? We have these meetings. What are we doing different? What we need to do different is we need to start holding accountable these kids that are doing this. There has to be accountability for this behavior. We need to give the parents and the child the services they need to prevent them from continuing to do this. The cost of these crimes to our community has no price tag. Innocent lives will continue to be affected and potentially lost if we continue at this rate, not to mention the lives of those that are repeatedly committing these crimes. It cannot be tolerated. We as a society have created this culture of lawlessness by having no consequences. Earlier this year, we were called to one of the stores for somebody that was scanning items but not scanning them correctly and was going to shoplift. We showed up. We were standing there at the end. We told them to make sure they scanned the items and didn't steal. They continued to steal items and walked out right in front of us because they could care less that we were there. And they couldn't believe we stopped them to hold them accountable. We cannot continue to have this. I'm going to invite up the Webster Chief, Dennis Kohlmeyer, so he can go over the incident last night.
Thank you. As the undersheriff said, this is a pervasive problem. It's impacting all of our communities, whether it's a village, a town, a county, the city. This is just a microcosm of what's happening in our community. So I'm going to kind of fill you in on some of the taxation of our resources that's going on in the law enforcement community in just one little snapshot of what our afternoon was yesterday. Even before we got to the point of addressing the stolen vehicle issue that came to our town, starting at 1 o'clock, we go to a plaza for a shoplifter, fled before we get there. 2.5 hours later, same exact store, shoplifters. We took 2 juveniles into custody for that. An hour later, to the exact same store again for 3 juveniles in custody for shoplifting. That's 5 juveniles in the matter of an hour at the same store, separate juveniles, separate incidents. Less than an hour and a half later, we're at a different plaza with an arrest for a property crime where the suspect fled. Roanoke Police Department assisted us in stopping the vehicle, taking somebody into custody who had a no bail, no release warrant with the city of Rochester. 20 minutes after that, we go back to that first store that I talked to 3 times, so 4th time in that afternoon for another larceny with somebody in custody. That's all before we get to the point of dealing with the stolen vehicles that it really impacted us. About 30 minutes after that, while our officers are still tied up on these other property crimes that are taking a huge toll on our resources, we get a call for suspicious vehicle at the movie theater on Empire Boulevard. Our officer sergeant responds, identifies that it's a stolen vehicle. It's a stolen Elantra that already had the window broken out and the steering column damaged. It hadn't even been reported yet to 911. Witnesses described a suspect vehicle leaving with 4 kids in it, going down Ridge Road towards our plazas. About 30 minutes later, we get the first stolen vehicle report from a plaza on Ridge Road. 10 minutes later, we get a second stolen vehicle report from a separate plaza. So this is one plaza, second plaza, 2 different stolen vehicle reports. 7 minutes after that, we go to the same plaza for a larceny in progress completely unrelated to the stolen vehicles. While that's going on, a 3rd vehicle is being stolen from the parking lot where that same larceny is being reported. So that's now 3 stolen vehicles taken in a matter of 20 minutes or so in the town of Webster. Our sergeant, or one of our sergeants, is on Ridge Road, sees one of the vehicles reported stolen, follows it, waits for backup, attempts to make the stop, the vehicle flees. Sergeant ends up terminating that pursuit, and that vehicle is recovered unoccupied in the city of Rochester. At the same time that that's going on, we were being assisted by the Sheriff's Department, who recognized the calls for service happening in the town of Webster and the impact that that was having, proactively came up to assist, observed several other stolen vehicles leaving, matching the description of what just happened. As they were trying to apprehend those vehicles, one of them crashed. Red Kia Soul crashes at Bay and Lake. 2 of the other vehicles continue through the area. While that's being investigated, one of those stolen vehicles comes back through that scene, almost strikes a deputy, and continues down Bay Road, where that vehicle ends up hitting a sheriff's car and crashing at Bay and Ridge. So between those 2 incidents, 2 juveniles were taken into custody, 1 male, 1 female, both 15 years of age. Both of them were charged with the possession of the stolen property for unauthorized use of the motor vehicle, and the male juvenile was charged with attempt to assault second of the deputy. Like we've highlighted in all the other conversations we've had, people are going to get hurt and people are going to continue to be put in danger by this problem that we're having. This is a pervasive problem, and it has exponential impacts for our community. And law enforcement can't be the only answer and can't be the only solution to addressing this issue. So, thank you. I'm going to introduce the county executive. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chief, and I also want to thank Sheriff Todd Baxter, Under Sheriff Corey Brown. I want to thank all the men and women of the Monroe County Sheriff's Department. office, all of our deputies, our local police officers as well. Thank you, Rochester Police Department as well. And Chief Tantillo is here from Public Safety, Director of Monroe County Public Safety. And I want to thank all of our probation officers as well. You know, every day, these brave officers are on the front lines doing the best that they can to keep our neighborhoods safe with the tools and resources that are available. They deserve immense credit for their efforts, even as the odds continue to stack up against them. But here's the problem, and I've said this before. The changes made to state law and the lack of resources has led to a situation where there's just no accountability to match the offense and interrupt the cycle of offenses. We're talking about 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds. They're perpetrating violence and introducing chaos seemingly every day. Here are just a few recent examples where the level of punishment just doesn't fit the level of crime committed. We had a situation where 2 youths were remanded to a non-secure facility who regularly AWOL, requiring deputies to apprehend, targeted, and conned an older woman who was the witness to a friend's criminal's case. To give them a ride and attempted to steal her car and purse. The judge released to the county rather than remanding to detention. 2 days later, after releasing to the county instead of detention, 2 days later, they absconded 2 different times, which required getting a warrant, and now they can't be located. Another one, a 16-year-old on probation for a gun and drug charge, gets a second gun charge, absconds. The warrant is secured. Caught with a gun and a dead body. Remanded for detention for 1 month, then an ankle brace. Now, can't locate him. Lastly, a 14-year-old gang affiliated, arrested with a gun. Remanded to detention for a few days, absconds. The warrant secured, wanted for murdering a 12-year-old, fled to Pennsylvania, and is involved in a triple homicide now in Pennsylvania. This is a direct result of a system that was enacted without resources, tools, or follow-through to fill the gap that was being created by Raise the Age and Bail Reform. The lack of oversight and supervision brought on by changes to state law and the leniency from family court judges is impacting nearly every corner of our community. The state criminal justice reforms were designated to protect a segment of juvenile and youth offenders from having to go to jail. But what it didn't do is give an alternative to hold dangerous teens accountable. So where violent 16, 17, 18-year-olds used to be put in jail for their actions, they're now sent to the Children's Detention Center, which has a limited number of beds or the ability to house a number of juveniles who are committing these crimes. So we're living through the aftermath of this failed implementation. We hear the pleas and the cries for help, and they come from our police officers, and they come from public safety officials, but they're also coming from concerned residents and their loved ones. My administration has taken action. We've announced a historic investment in the Sheriff's Office that will add 40 new sworn positions and create a regional investigative operations center for multi-jurisdictional crime. And just a few weeks ago, I announced that the Monroe County Probation Department created a program to fill the gaps in the state criminal justice system called the Juvenile Enhanced Diversion Stabilization Program, which reduces periods of inactivity in the state criminal justice system. Early returns on JEDs are positive. It's helping to hold teen offenders accountable for their actions. But what it doesn't have is the mandate of services needed through state law. More has to happen. The Juvenile Offender Transitional Facility that is being called for today will change state law to require intervention services, something I'm not able to require through JEDs. We can offer the services, all the services in the world, and Monroe County can put together those services, and we can utilize our probation department to do that. But without the authority under state law to mandate it, we're up against a wall. The facilities will remove offenders from the criminal environment, right? Because what's happening is you have that gap. You have the young people, our police officers, these men, as you saw from these examples and the examples I raised, they're solving the crime. They're locating the individuals. They're getting these youth, but then there's a gap from the time they get the youth, and then if you don't have a mandated action plan from when you get those youth in your custody, they're just being released right back out into the same environment that led them to create the crime in the first place. That doesn't make sense. The resource and the mandate to connect them to those resources are just not available, and that's why we need the state law changed. The facility that we're talking about today will remove offenders from the criminal environment. It removes them, it breaks that cycle. It's similar to the JEDS program, but it immediately mandates the start of these services and intervention to reduce the chances of recommitting these crimes. It holds offenders and their parents accountable. It provides the services that those young people and those parents need, but it holds people accountable for the dangerous actions. Strengthening the state's criminal justice reforms and making systemic changes are certainly a critical starting point. They're badly needed. But without these changes, we fear that more of the same is just going to continue to happen. One thing is clear, and I've been saying it for months, there has to be accountability and consequences for these unlawful and harmful actions. There has to be a disruption in criminal activity committed by our young residents. Failure to do so will lead to more problems. It's going to lead to more crimes being committed in our neighborhoods. We cannot continue on this path of chaos, fear, and lawlessness that we've experienced. The Juvenile Offender Transitional Facility is another step in the right direction to bring accountability to those who are committing crimes, to get people back on the right path, and it breaks that cycle of crime. It makes it so you're not taking these young people who've committed these offenses and putting them right back into the exact same environment that they just came out of that led them to commit the crime in the first place. So again, I want to thank Sheriff Baxter. I want to thank Under Sheriff Brown for their leadership on this issue, for partnering with me and my administration. I want to thank all the men and women in law enforcement who are working really around the clock, putting everything they can into this issue, into this situation. But we need more help, and we need help from our state partners as well. Thank you.
Thank you, County Executive Bello. We'll now open it up for your questions.
I have a question for the undersheriff, please. Sir, I remember speaking to one of your sergeants last year, and he explained to me that these car thefts are labeled property crimes. Can you just explain, under the current bail law, where do property crimes fall with what you do if you catch both juveniles and adults committing that, and explain what change should be made in this category, in your opinion?
Sure. So currently, when we catch a juvenile in a stolen vehicle, they're going to be released on an appearance ticket because it's a property crime, because it's not a violent offense. So with that, what we're looking for, when you think about this, we had 30 people that did multiple stolen vehicles that we caught. How many stolen vehicles were they in that we didn't catch? Right? We don't think we catch them every time they're in a stolen car, or we're catching everyone in a stolen car. Obviously, we're not. So they're doing these repeat offenders. So what we need from the law so that it changes is that they're going to be mandated to go to this transitional facility, that they have to go there and they have to receive services, both them and their family, instead of releasing them a few hours later on an appearance ticket. So that's really what we're looking for with this. Yes, sir. Sure. So we want it as soon as possible, right? How long it would actually take to get up and running, and to work with our nonprofits to have it staffed 24 hours a day, which is what we're looking for. We're looking for a place that no matter when something happens, we can bring someone to. I think there's things that we could do quickly, right? We could make quick changes to the law, and then we could mandate this happens. Having an actual facility will probably take longer, right? But to have a place where that if you get caught, you are now going to be held, and you're going to be mandated to get services and help for you. And your family also has to be involved, so that we're not just releasing someone back out to the community that maybe doesn't have a family, whose family is not involved in their life, so they're immediately going out to recommit these crimes. We are not doing them any service, right, by having them go out and recommit these acts, and we're certainly not doing a service to the community by allowing them to go out and re-victimize someone else. Think about it. It's 2,200 vehicles almost this year. That means people that wanted to go to work cannot go to work now. They cannot make money and pay for their family because their car is gone. When you look at just this week when the person was killed inside the stolen car, whose car was didn't even realize their car was gone. They needed to go to work. We need to do better. So we need to say as a community, this is what we want, and have the state lawmakers be on our side to help fund this, to help make the state law so that they have to do this, so that we hold people accountable. We need to change our culture so that they know when they get caught, they're going to be held accountable. Think about my example of the shoplifter. The deputy was standing there in front of them saying, don't do it, and they did it anyways. Imagine that mentality. And then they couldn't believe that they got stopped and arrested. I just can't fathom that. We need to change that. We need to change that culture.
A quick follow-up, if I could, sir.
Sure.
When you do encounter these suspects and you arrest them for stealing cars, do they tell you why they're doing this? Is it just some sort of through the social media challenge or for attention, or are they trying to do it for money? What's the reason behind this trend? I've been here for 2 years, and it seems so new.
It's all different why they're doing it. Certainly they had the TikTok challenge that was there before. I wouldn't say that that's continuing why they're doing it. There's just no accountability. That's why they're doing it, because there's no consequences. So until it ramps up, there's no consequences, right? What we're trying to do is not have someone steal a car and crash it and hurt others before they're taken into custody and held. We need people to stop before people are getting hurt. We don't want to be sitting here at a tragedy. Imagine that 7 juveniles in a stolen car, like has happened before in our community, where that car crashes and they all die. That's happened in our community with juveniles. We don't want that to happen again. We can't wait for a tragedy before we say enough's enough. Sure. So we need the law to say that when you get caught committing these crimes, you're caught in a stolen vehicle, you are going to, before you can be released on an appearance ticket, you are going to be brought to this transitional facility. You're going to be mandated to participate in intervention and services. And just as important, because we're trying to hold parents accountable also, is to get the parents involved. The parents are going to have to come down as part of the law before their young person is released, and they're going to have to get involved and get intervention services. Many parents really are at their wits' end, right? They don't know what to do with their child. We need to help them. We can't let that continue. We need to give them the services to help them. And then the parents, we've actually called parents in the middle of the night for a 15-year-old, and the parents have said, we're not coming. Now what? Where is that? What's going to happen to that child? Of course they're going to reoffend. So we need to hold that parent accountable and say, you are responsible for your kids, and you have to participate in their rehabilitation through accountability, right? We want to change lives. We want to change their lives so that they stop victimizing other people, so that their lives are changed.
No, most are not. I mean, the ones that we have stopped and arrested, I mean, we've had honor roll students. It's fun. There's no accountability, and they have time on their hands. It just seems to be that, all right, let's get a car and let's go ride around. But the spectrum of the ones that we've arrested, it varies greatly.
I have a question for Executive Bell, if I may, sir. This facility that we just heard you and the officers talk about, is this something that the county would be funding, or are you trying to ask for the state to give grants to fund this? How would the facility be funded?
Well, here's the issue. We need help from New York State, because and I want to get back to the question you just asked to help put a finer point on it. The reason why we need help from New York State is because what's happening here is, think about what happens when they arrest a young person. They arrest a young person for stealing a car. A decision has to get made, right? They could either go to detention if that's appropriate, the Children's Detention Center. We've worked through our JEDS program to start issuing the expedited appearance tickets, right, so they can get to court the next day. The problem, so with JEDS, and what we've instituted then is an intensive supervision program, right? So we can do the expedited appearance ticket. We can do daily supervision with that child and their family and help connect them to the programs. But what we can't do is mandate it, right? The court has to do that, and the law has to allow for that. So what this new facility would do would give the police another option now. So when they do arrest a young person, instead of being left with, either it's detention or it's going right back home to the same environment that led them to create this, or to commit this offense in the first place. Now it gives, what we're asking for is the ability to mandate that you go to this other office so that you can sit down and figure out what is the circumstance, what happened that led this kid to commit this crime in the first place, what services does the family need, what does the kid need, and then how do you connect them to that and then stay with them. So it works hand in hand with the JEDS program that we announced, where it's a daily supervision, but we can't mandate it. This would allow mandated right immediately. So a child's picked up, they can go right into that program.
So if the state law had changed,
Right.
changed and you were able to build this facility, would it be county funded? Would you need the legislature to vote it all?
We would love, and that's what we're asking for, is the state to help fund this, because this is a problem that was created from a lack of resources in the first place, right? This was a lack of resources in the first place that led to this, and so we think the state should step up and help pay for this facility. Well, we're asking for it as soon as possible. We're a community that has needs right now. The kids are being arrested, these young people, every day. We have parents reaching out crying for help. I mean, I've interviewed and I've sat with and had conversations with moms over the last several weeks whose kids have offended, who have been in the Children's Detention Center. they need help too. Our parents need help too. Our families need help. A lot of times, as the undersheriff said, our family, parents too don't know what to do sometimes when they put their kid to bed at night, thinking their child's is in their room, and then they get a call from the police at 3 o'clock in the morning that they were involved in a stolen car, and so the parents need help, and this is a facility that's going to bring them that help. It's tough right now. Yeah, it's every day we manage the census every day, and so it's a day-to-day process. But when you go back to like what Raise the Age did, right? So Raise the Age took some of the most violent teen offenders. We have 17, 18, in some cases even 19-year-olds, violent offenders who would have otherwise been in the county jail or in the Children's Detention Center now, taking up bed space. But then, of course, the state didn't make additional beds available to make up for that. So now when you have more kids offending that need detention space, the detention space is at a premium because we have all the Raise the Age population that comes into detention centers. So this is why we go back to we need more resources from the state. So we do a good job managing the population, of course, with our local police department every day. But that's a difficult situation. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Yes. So we have done that. Yes. So we have done that. So under my administration, we've expanded ancillary space at a different location. We've expanded out 10 beds at a different location, and we've had conversations with the state right now to do 10 more. But again, that's a short-term solution. And really, what needed to happen was but again, that's a short-term solution. We're also engaged in building a new children's detention center as well that'll have different beds, but that's going to take another year and a half to build a whole new facility. So what we've been doing is working with the state and the sheriff's department to build these ancillary beds. I think we did 10 more last year. We're doing 10 more. We're in talks with the state now to do now. But again, that's the issue is that should have been done when they passed Raise the Age. And that's the lack of resources that we're talking about, because they pass these laws but then don't put the resources in place for us to be able to implement them properly and keep people safe.